stars, rock and rolling through the cool guitars. Chuck's got the questions, digging so sharp, peeling back layers, hitting the heart. Shute podcast, blowing your mind. Every topic.
Yeah, I don't know, Chuck. Keep it keep it general. I wrote this a long time ago, and I don't even have a copy of the book yet, right? So it's hard for me to remember exactly what's in there. I mean, let's just don't hit me with too much heavy trivia kind of thing.
No. I mean, I read it and I have notes.
Okay.
So like, yeah, I mean, maybe the heavy just whatever you can recall or remember. But I mean, because I learned a lot of things, and I consider myself a pretty diehard Guns N' Roses fan. I followed them.
Right.
And then they were like the first band that got me into my first concert was Guns N' Roses and Metallica. So I think I know the band, and I learned a lot of stuff from your book.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, here's an easy question, because one of the things I noticed too was a lot of the pictures in the book. That's another reason for, because we might spoil some of the things in the book if we talk about it too much, but a reason to buy it too is just for the pictures. I can describe them, but you have to buy the book to see them. And a lot of these pictures I've never seen before. Where did you get these pictures?
Well, this publisher has actually always been really good in that respect. It's kind of a collaboration with myself and my editor over there, Dennis. He's a big music guy too, so he knows what he's doing. He also has his antenna up. He doesn't want to repeat too much stuff that he's seen too many times before. So yeah, it's a little bit of that, some things from my collection and whatnot as well. But just basically speaking, all of these books I've done with Cordo Motor Books, Voyager, depending on what name you want to call them, has really nice photo curation. It turns into a really nice, coffee table book.
How many books have you? I know I read that you had 7,900 record reviews. How many actual books do you have?
I guess I've done about 130 books at this point.
Wow. That is so crazy. Do you just love doing this, researching, then writing it all out and doing all the work?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing. I've worked with my good buddy Tim Henderson on Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles, and I've written for a lot of magazines before. And I never liked that idea that the month ends and then you got to do it all over again. Magazines are very disposable, and so is anything kind of news based. So I've always liked the idea of books having that evergreen quality. Especially, I really like writing books on bands that have broken up a long time ago and they aren't going to give you a new album or whatever that makes that out of date. So yeah, it's nice to have it end and then it's there and it's kind of the story. But what I have been finding recently with various of my publishers is as some time goes on, they've come back to me a few times and say, hey, what do you want to do an update now that another couple albums are out, kind of thing.
Sure.
That's always a pain because, you got to kind of go through the whole thing and see where you said something like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen in 2024. Right. And you got to find all those little things. Right. And, people have died and all that. Do you change things to past tense? Do you mention it somewhere earlier? So it's always, there's little gremlins that come out of that process of just updating a book. You got to fool around with the table of contents. You got to redo your bibliography at the end, maybe change your biography. So yeah, it's a funny process where you have to really keep an eye on what you said throughout the book.
Well, yeah, because even in this Guns N' Roses book, I'm assuming the time that you finished it, you didn't know that Frank Farrer, the drummer, was going to be replaced, and they have I can't even, now I'm spacing on the guy's name. I'm not.
Little things like that. It's just kind of like an oh darn, but it's like Guns N' Roses are working on a new album. That would be, have a new album come out would be not great, right? Because then you're missing something massive, right?
Yeah. So when you have over 100 books, are you constantly getting in like mailbox money from books that you've written years ago? Like just various things, like you'll have a check every month just from all these books that you've written?
No. Okay. So I would say 40% of my income is being a mail order guy of my own books. So that's something, right? But no, once a book dies, once it's over with, it's really over with. Like I have books where I get maybe, in an extreme case, I have books that I literally still have copies of or are in print that I get one order every 3 months on. kind of thing, right? But when a book dies, I mean, one order a month is kind of normal. So when it's over, right?
Okay.
And there really is a window right at the front where it's almost over after a month, right? Kind of thing. So and then yeah, I mean, and some of this adds up to I get royalties from my various publishers over the years, and those dwindle and get smaller and smaller too because they're not really selling a lot of them too. I should do a better job of reminding people that these things exist, right? Books on Riot or Montrose or Rainbow or whatever. I should be going on Facebook, and I've been thinking about that and saying, hey, there are these books out there because yeah, people don't know, right? I mean, I could put books up at my website that are brand new, like the Iron Maiden and the Guns N' Roses, with pricing and everything. And if I don't go to my database and tell them about it, it's pretty funny to see how nobody really knows still that they can order these books from me. So, yeah, I think to keep getting any kind of pay at all, I have to keep coming up with new books.
Oh wow! So, what is the best selling book you've written?
Oh boy, I would say that the trilogy of the whole story of Rush in those hardcover books, and then they all came out in hardcover. They all came out in softcover with different design. So that was the story of Rush through my Canadian publisher ECW Press. That did really well. It's funny, things we do on Blue Oyster Cult kind of does well. People just are always fascinated by that band, as am I. I find them super interesting. What else has done well over there? We put out a Queen book through Voyager, which was good timing. It was kind of on the backs of the movie coming out, so that did well around then. That's kind of important too, timing with some of these things. Is the band being talked about very much, kind of thing.
Yeah. So why a Guns N' Roses book? Why now? Just because you hadn't done that one and they're still really popular?
Well, it's called Guns N' Roses at 40. So we're at Voyager, we're constantly looking at these milestone things. We've done some at 50s, we've done at 75 for David Bowie, based on how old he would have been. Like some are a little finagly, right? But Guns N' Roses at 40, it kind of made sense. I mean, I've even done anniversary books for them on just the Dark Side of the Moon and the Who Quadrophenia, right? 50 years since those albums came out, right? Is it 50, 73? How did we do it? Yeah, I guess those books are 2 years ago now. Yeah. So yeah, and this at 50 series they've been doing, and this is the first one I've been doing at 40. The idea is, okay, it is the band at 40 years old, but what we're doing, and I didn't even come up with this concept. This is probably Dennis's idea. But we're basically taking, okay, now I need you to come up with 40 career highlights and tell the story chronologically with 40 career highlights. And that's the format of the book. So that's the other thing that publishers like to do. I mean, they like to come up with fresh new ways to present this information and put a book together. So, I don't know. It's hard to tell what level of Guns N' Roses fan is going to learn what from this, but it is squeezed into a pretty limited word count and a pretty interesting sort of canned idea of these 40 career highlights. So yeah, that's what you get with this book.
Yeah, I was interesting. I maybe I knew this and I forgot, or I don't remember this part about Axl's first band was called Rapid Fire. Some guitarist Kevin Lawrence, like you just wonder, like, gosh, it'd be so weird to. I don't know if I've ever seen an interview with him. I wonder if he's still around, if he has memories of that first band that Axl was in. That would be interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of complication with the whole first band situation, and it's all covered in quite a bit of detail in this book. That took a lot of hours to put all that together because you're fighting the word count of each section all the time, right? And you have to make it really concise. So you kind of have to make every sentence count. But yeah, there was a lot of shifting, moving pieces around at that time. The chaotic sort of 83, 84, 85, 86 period with those guys.
Yeah, I had Tracy Guns on my show, and he's already talked about it on so many other shows, so I tried not to bring it up, but it did kind of spill in to the conversation. But I mean, it's just, yeah, because it was like, for people who don't know, it was first Hollywood Rose, or I think you said it was called something else. I think it was just called Rose at one point, then Hollywood, or first called Axl, then Rose, then Hollywood Rose, and then there was LA Guns, and I think Axl was in LA Guns for a minute. And then they merged the two, and it was Guns N' Roses, LA Guns, Hollywood Rose, Guns N' Roses. And then Tracy Guns went back to LA Guns, and then Axl got Slash, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, and you wonder sometimes if it's just like, okay, it's time to write up a flyer, guys, or draw up a flyer. What do we put on?
Right.
What's the name of us now, right?
It's crazy though, because I mean, I'm such a fan, and I do think a lot of it is, the skulls and the artwork and the name Guns and Roses. I just sounded so cool to me as a kid, and just like with a gun, and they had the rose on it, and it fit the band too, because it was like this, macho heavy, like guns, angry, and then there was also like this ballad soft side with the roses and stuff. So it was like, I thought it just was a great name and a great fit for the band.
Yeah. And I've always, and I say this in the book, I don't pull punches, particularly. I mean, I sort of say, my viewpoint of philosophically on all this, I've never considered them anything other than another hair metal band. They're just a really good one. And so there's a whole chapter in there about Guns N' Roses versus hair metal and how people, differentiate them and stuff. But I swear, I think over the years, it gets differentiated more and more and more. And the legend of how massive that first album is feeds into that, and it makes people frame it a certain way. And I think the story morphs over time. But when that album came out, it was just another, what I call it, I coined that term dirty hair metal, right? Or there's a similar category you could call bluesy hair metal, right? And then everybody, Guns N' Roses, frankly, were kind of the first. But I mean, the look is basically hair metal. I don't think we have to ascribe any massive genius to, they didn't dress hair metal or whatever, right? And so, but what happens is, because they were the first and they were a big success at this, coming up with this. So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, it was the best hair metal album, put it that way, but it is squarely in that genre in many, many different ways. But then what happens is it was so successful and so influential that it actually kind of caused the dirty hair metal or the bluesy hair metal thing going forward, right? Where you get every Poison and Cinder, everybody tries to make their authentic album at some point, right? And then you also literally got bands like Badlands and whatnot. But yeah, I don't see any reason to really say it doesn't belong to that genre.
Yeah, but it's just because I think too, I mean, you could talk about the Illusions and how that totally went away. A lot of those songs are completely not hair metal, but even that first album, I feel like there's not really a ballad, but I think it's the punk influence that gives it a different spin. Like maybe that's what you would call the dirty hair metal, because I feel like a lot of hair metal, it is very cliche, and even I as a diehard hair metal fan, sometimes I can't tell which one is this. But Guns N' Roses, I feel like they just had this like raw kind of punky vibe to it that I don't think a lot of other hair metal bands had that, except maybe LA Guns. And maybe that's I don't know if that was on purpose or just a coincidence that they both like the same stuff.
Yeah, I don't particularly feel a punky vibe in it. I mean, I feel like just a really high quality Aerosmith vibe to the whole thing, right? And there is a lot of personality in it as well. I mean, that's there's a reason it sold so many copies, right? Slash is a very unique sounding guitarist, albeit a very conservative guitarist. When he starts talking about his influences, it's like Stones and Aerosmith and stuff like that, right? And Axl has this super interesting voice. The album had good lyrics. It was super long. It was a long album. It's an ambitious album as well. And it had hits that did various things on it. So I almost it does feel to me like I've never really thought about it this way, but it almost feels like it's got the ambition of an Aerosmith Permanent Vacation and a Pump, but all the great things you love about Draw the Line and Rocks and Get Your Wings in it as well.
But don't you think too they had an edge to them as well? Because I know, the song It's So Easy, the lyrics to that, I mean, that was not something a typical hair metal band would be doing at the time. And the same with the Use Your Illusions. There's a bunch of songs as a kid when I was like 13. I was like, whoa, this is like, because they're telling people to fuck off and all this shit. And then that was not a thing that a lot of bands at the time, especially bands that were very popular, were doing. This would be more like a niche thing that where, if you could buy that record, but you're not going to sell millions of copies of an album where you're swearing all over it.
Yeah. I think most of the edge to that band comes from the fact that, they literally lived that life. They were authentic. I mean, they're kind of scary people, right?
Yeah.
so that's where the edge comes from. But when I think musically about it, having grown up being a metalhead since 7 years old, 8 years old, 1960 or 1970, 1971, and then being into punk as well, and then seeing hardcore go by, and then here comes grunge. I think grunge has 10 times more edge than anything Guns N' Roses ever did. And there is other music, but you're right, for popular music and for being part of this genre, it's at the outside edge of that. Not even at the outside edge of it, creatively speaking, right? I mean, at the far outside edge of it, maybe you had something, if you want to talk about getting really creative from inside that scene, Faith No More, Jane's Addiction, you can go that far. But you can even think of, when you, this is getting a little later and out of, I've never really thought about this, but around that time you would have had eventually bands like Big F, Liquid Jesus, Mind Funk. I guess we're getting a little more into grunge. But you even think of Alice in Chains, right? Alice in Chains at the very beginning, even before Facelift, right? When they were Alice in Chains, maybe with a Z, I think they had a little more of a glam. So at one point, Alice in Chains would have been kind of just the next step past Guns N' Roses. But by the time you get to Facelift, the debut album, it's 3 steps beyond, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that was more like
still
a Faith No More kind of alternative.
Yeah, although that band in particular is much closer to Guns N' Roses than Soundgarden or Pearl Jam or Nirvana or Melvins or Mudhoney was, right? And it even is in their roots. In fact, the other band that is the next step past Guns N' Roses would be Mother Love Bone from that scene.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think the same thing with Guns N' Roses and Alice in Chains. Both bands kind of came in and like turned things upside down. Like they shook. I think the Appetite album totally shook the hair metal thing, and I think Alice in Chains, it just shook the rock and metal in general. Same with Nirvana too. Like it kind of both those things needed to happen. Like hair metal needed a shakeup, and then rock in general needed the shakeup with the grunge. And I mean, I was just thinking about that today. That the Dirt album, especially for Alice in Chains, I mean, that is just so dark. I don't even know if I would use the word edge, but it's just so dark and just so original. And like, you could feel like what they were going through at the time. Probably Lane, it was a big influence on a lot of that sound, and Jerry with the guitars and stuff, but just, it was just this dark place that you could feel it. You could feel where they were coming from.
Yeah, it's a definitely a big step up in creativity. And I mean, the most creative band from all of that was Soundgarden. But and then there was a different kind of creativity, more of just a different sensibility or aesthetic that you got out of Nirvana and Melvins and Mudhoney and stuff like that. But I don't know if Guns N' Roses shook things up particularly. I mean, when I think back to it, it's like this album comes out, hair metal still has 4.5, 5 good years to go when this album comes out, right? I mean, you talk about all those guys on the Strip, and all they said is, we just started dressing differently. There were still tons of hair metal albums to come. Skid Row's still coming around. Warrant's still coming around. Cinderella's got 3 or 4 more albums. Motley Crue's got more albums. There's not a big difference that happens, right? I mean, you essentially get some more, you get a little more authenticity and a little less pure glam out of things. But the pure glam out of things kind of continued as well. So it's not everybody kind of changed course from this. So I don't think you ever get within. See, I did this book called The Big Book of Hair Metal, and I kind of regretted ending it at 1991 because we ended it at the Nirvana album coming out.
Oh no, yeah, there's some great hair metal stuff that
I know.
I think as a hardcore fan, something like Warrant and a lot of these bands, in my opinion, put out their best. Poison, I think they put out some of their best stuff in the mid, like 93, 92. Exactly.
That's the point, Chuck. So what happens with hair metal is it's not like everybody is influenced by grunge and they completely change direction. What happens is there's this one I did a podcast episode called Go to Vancouver and Try Harder, right? Which is where which is where a lot of hair metal bands did that pilgrimage to record in Vancouver at either Little Mountain or what's the other one called? Anyways, with Bob Rock or with Mike Fraser and all these guys. So one thing that happened, one thing that hair metal bands did, right, is they said, okay, grunge has happened. If we're going to compete with this new music, it would look really fake if we changed our entire philosophy. But what we're going to do is we're going to make the very, very best, most ambitious, most sober, most thoughtful, most interesting, long version of a hair metal album we can, right? And so you get better records from Extreme and Motley Crue and Mr. Big and, like you say, Cinderella, Poison. Warrant does Dog Eat Dog. Love Hate comes along. I love Hate. I think they're amazing. My favorite hair metal album probably of all time is Wasted in America, the second Love Hate. And so yeah, you're right. Kiss does Revenge, right? Revenge is a total upgrade on Crazy Nights and Hot in the Shade, right? So that's kind of what happens. And then Guns N' Roses comes out, and they kind of do the same thing where now, I mean, one of the cool things they do is this massive 277-minute album idea. But a lot of those songs, they widen their palette. They get even more generalist rock and roll, like we're now a world band and we represent, or it's almost like the Clash with London Calling, or U2 with Rattle and Hum, where they say we're going to embrace all of American culture here, sort of thing. Guns N' Roses moves from here's our selection of songs on Appetite for Destruction, but now that we've got whatever it is there, maybe what would we say, 40 songs, something like that, across those two albums. Now that we've got this wide palette, we're doing this entire thing all at once, which was so ballsy and cool that they did that, right? But now they've really stretched out, and you get an Estranged and a November Rain. You get some total gut bucket blues kind of things on there. You get some punkier things, I think, as well. So it's almost like here, Appetite is like the hub of the wheel, the Guns N' Roses wheel, and now you get to Appetite, and they're going off in all directions and giving you this cool panorama of, frankly, like American rock history in a way, right?
Yeah, I love those Use Your Illusion albums, although I do wonder if it wouldn't be more revered if they had taken all the best songs and just put it on one album, and then took the rest and maybe made it like a bonus album or released it later as like a diehard fan out, something different, like a bootleg or something, because I think if you put the best songs on one album, I think it rivals Appetite. But obviously, as it was with two doubles, it never did as well as Appetite. And it was criticized. There's a lot of filler and things like that.
Yeah, I always love that idea too. It's good. Metallica is another example of a band who makes these massive long albums that have to be on double CDs now, where it would be really cool if I think they gave us more albums and maybe even pumped up the identity. Like, that's something Guns N' Roses could have done as well. It is like, give us distinguish them a little more, because people always have that hot debate on which is better, what is the personality of Use Your Illusion 1 versus 2. But yeah, if you played with those songs and sequenced them across two separate albums, say 11, 12, 13 months apart or whatever, right? You could have really like said, okay, well, people are gonna say this about these 12 songs, but these 12 songs, they're going to be generally way more up tempo or something, or punkier. And they're going to say, and we know, there are adjectives they can ascribe to this. But I think as it stands, people listen to those two albums, and they're just, because they're at the same time too, they're just confused. And really, there's not a lot of, there's not, you can't ascribe a personality to one versus the other, I don't think, too accurately.
No. Yeah. Well, it's the production is different and stuff, but yeah, I mean, going back to the Appetite and the stuff in your book, that was another thing that I found so interesting, that I don't think I knew this. maybe this is common knowledge, but I didn't know all the different producers they were meeting with to produce Appetite before they settled on Mike Klink. It was the Nazareth guy, Manny Charlton. They met with him, and who produced some of the demos, I guess. And then Paul Stanley was considered, and Max Norman. I didn't know all that. So that was I thought that was kind of interesting to think of how that album could have sounded different with a different producer. Because as it
Yeah.
sounds now, I feel like Mike Klink, he didn't do a lot, which I think was good. He kind of let it have a raw, feel. He didn't try to overproduce it. I mean, I'd say the most produced thing is having the keyboards on Paradise City.
Yeah, the production job on that is absolute magic. It's hard to describe what it is. It's correct. It's conservative. It's got all the bottom end you want. It's got all the top end you want, but there's just something aggressive about it. There's something, it's got really magical mid ranges to it. And I think the other thing that is, I think Mike Klink, helps Slash get a sound. There's just something about the way his tone is on that album, which again, it's just got hair on it. It's just a gnarly, cool guitar tone. But it's not an album that you're going to say, wow, this is weird. This is weird production. There's nothing strange about it. It's just really, really street, but tough street. It doesn't sound like crappy street. It just has this really visceral, in your face sort of quality, and I think that all helped as well. You kind of feel that there is a little push pull in the tempos as well. There's a little bit of breathing that you get out of Steven Adler and Duff in terms of the rhythm section as well. It's just a brilliantly produced album.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. I didn't know that Steven Adler recorded all the drums in 6 days. That blew my mind.
Yeah, and well, I mean, this band was really routine. They knew what they were doing at this point, and but yeah, it's still you wonder. It's just so scary thinking of the drugs and the drink going into this band all the time, and to have them pull this stuff out. But I guess when it comes down to it, maybe they, I do kind of get mad when people say that Guns N' Roses didn't put out much music, but yeah, obviously it's a fair bit apart, and it's still a small catalog. But when you add it all up, you've got the EP with originals on it and faux live stuff and covers. You've got acoustics. So they start off, there's some complication already. You get a super long album for the vinyl days in Appetite. You get 2 more super long albums of all originals, right? Which could have been easily 3 albums worth of material. You get a full covers album. And then over the years, I mean, we do get Chinese Democracy. That I think that totally counts. Over the years, you get individual songs here and there along the way for soundtracks or whatever. And then that's right. I have sort of a chapter in the book that kind of argues this point, right? Where, you think of Slash's Snake Pit and Duff and Duff's side projects. You think of Izzy Stradlin and how prolific he was over the years. You think of Slash featuring Miles Kennedy. You think of the Slash album. You add all that stuff together, and these guys have stayed busy. Velvet Revolver, they've actually, they absolutely have stayed busy. It's just a lot of it doesn't have the Guns N' Roses branding to it.
Yeah. Do you know, is there any sort of talk of a new album? Because I mean, you always hear rumors, but is there any sort of concrete things that says a new album is coming or new songs? I mean, they put stuff out here and there.
Yeah, I remember hearing about 2 months ago, just a very vague thing. Oh, we're working on new material for a new album or whatever. So I don't know how serious they are. I mean, frankly, they've been pretty quiet in the news, and that often means they're working, right? So
yeah, I wonder too if they could. I would love for them to get Izzy back, at least for a song or two, just a songwriting session. Have him play on 1 or 2 songs. Just curious what they could do with him, because I feel like he was a big part of the songwriting process. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell because of the Appetite. It just says written by Guns N' Roses, but that he had, people brought in different riffs and lyrics and things. And I feel like he was a big part of the songwriting.
Yeah, and that's also what I found so interesting about doing the book. I mean, one of the surprising things is how often he'd show up and he'd play live with them and stuff, right? Or any estranged members. They're not all that estranged. They can come around and do stuff. So these guys, are on kind of talking terms, and all the guest stars all the time that show up and do songs with them, or them paying tribute to their heroes like Mike Monroe or whatever, and going play Angel City, right? The Angels from Australia. I thought that was amazing, right? Playing with those guys. So that's really cool as well. But yeah, it's good to see that the relations are there, and these guys are not crazy old like our like many of my rock heroes who are into their 70s now, kind of thing. I mean, they still could have some gas in the tank where we could see another album from them. I hope it happens.
Yeah. You also mentioned I don't know if I must have probably knew this, maybe I forgot, but they had done early during the Appetite or before that, around that time, they did shows with Motley Crue. Do we have any documentation of that, like stories or pictures or like video of that? Because that's a crazy show to think of Guns N' Roses in their heyday with Motley Crue and the same. I mean,
yeah, I can't remember.
That must have been insane.
Yeah, I can't remember if there's anything on YouTube. I mean, the way YouTube works, obviously, is there's probably individually you could see Guns N' Roses playing when they're on the Motley Crue tour, or you can see Motley Crue play when they're on with Guns N' Roses, but you're not going to see them together, kind of thing, right? So.
Yeah, because I think you said in the book Slash was with Nikki Sixx the night he OD'd. I thought it was Steven Adler, or was it both of them?
I don't know whatever. I can't remember, and where I got that.
It's there's so much incestuous things doing these interviews and interviewing a lot of these guys that there's so many things where they're friends with this guy and then this band and even a lot of the bands that you wouldn't think, like the hair metal people, hung out with like Red Hot Chili Peppers and stuff. Back in the day, everyone was just friends. And because who would have Bob Forrest, who's now like he's like a drug alcohol counselor, but he said back in the day, like he was friends with Red Hot Chili Peppers, and he goes, "Oh, they were friends with all the hair metal bands." He's like, the thing that brought them together, drugs. Drugs was the thing that brought everybody together.
Yeah, funny. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I've done some stuff on my History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff podcast about the whole various times. I know it comes up with the whole thing, like these guys should have been big, these guys should have been big, these guys should have been big. But the main point, and being here in Canada, I'm in Toronto, the main point is how big do you want to be? Because if you want to be big, you got to move to LA, right? So if you're not going to move from your territory or from your region, you're not going to be boots on the ground where all the other musicians are and all the guys are from the industry that you can meet in person and invite out to gigs and be at parties with and go down to the office and negotiate and stuff. So there's so many stories like that where it really does feel like there are so many bands that left a lot on the table, and it's a personal choice, and there's probably a million reasons not to move as well. But it's like, yeah, there are a lot of bands that had they gone and set up shop in LA at that time, if you're that kind of music or whatever, like get in there in 1984, 85 and don't move, just stay there. You would have had a lot more doors open for you than staying, than staying in Toronto or staying even in New York City for that matter.
Yeah, you put, like you said, you're a big love-hate fan. Because were they East Coast? I think they were New Jersey, right?
No, they're an LA band.
They were LA. Okay,
they're LA. Yeah, and I revere those guys. I think they're amazing. I thought Blackout in a Red Room was incredible, and then Wasted America is an absolute masterpiece, and the next one's a masterpiece too. But the fact of the matter is, by the time they come around, the tide has turned, right? There's that whole, you could get late in the scene. Things are still very good in 89, 90 kind of thing. But, if you're making the brunt of your records after that kind of things, Skid Row had a nice run. Jackal comes late, right? Jackal comes late. They stay in Atlanta. But you come late and you can have some success with that first one. You're catching the mature phase kind of thing. But by the time he gets to the second and the third one, all of a sudden that record label, that major label record label's got a Slash next to it, and you're now on the boutique part of it. And then the next one you're down to an indie, and the next one you're putting it out yourself, kind of thing. Yeah,
that is crazy. It's like it was tough back then. Now, I guess the music scene is so different. I feel like you don't really need to move to LA and New York as much. Like you can put out everything yourself and you can just go viral, but it's so hard to get your voice heard in such a sea of like how many new records come out every day on Spotify or whatever. It's insane. It used to be like there's so many record labels and only so many records come out every week. And now it's just like anybody can put out a record, and it's and a lot of them sound pretty good.
Yeah. Well, you go all the way back to the 70s, and the fact of the matter is all those records that were failures that we know are all done in the same studios as the big, expensive, successful records. They're all done with a big producer. There was no real even small label structure in the 70s. So everything's more or less on a major label. So, and then that changes, with punk and the new wave British heavy metal and hardcore and stuff. So now you start getting indie labels and stuff. But, now the whole situation is that it's just, with computers, the dozen different ways computers can be used, it's just way more efficient and easy to make a good sounding album now. So that's why there's so many records out there. So, and yeah, the different ways to make money. The kids have come up with new ways to make money. It's not the same model that it was before. The whole death of physical product is such a profound thing in all of this as well.
Yeah. Do you think, could there be a new rock band that could come and, turn the rock scene upside down like Guns N' Roses and Alice in Chains and all these other bands did? Because it seems like it's, that used to happen every few years. Somebody would come around and go, wow, and like turn the scene upside down. And now it's like, it seems like it's been, I don't know, 20 or so years. I mean, who was the last people? I mean, there was like, the Marilyn Manson and Kid Rock. That was kind of a big new scene. And then it hasn't, I'm trying to think of someone in the last 20 years or so that's really like stood out.
Well, all I know is, and I'm just amazed at this, but I mean, we have a stadium here in Toronto, right? Rogers Center, where the Jays play. And it used to be called the Sky Dome, right? With the famously retractable dome and all that, right? Yeah. Rarely you get rock concerts in there, but you do once in a while. I just saw Metallica in there. But even Metallica, I think they're in there. They were there for 2 nights, but I mean, they were there with Pantera, Suicidal Tendencies, and the other night I think is Limp Bizkit and whatnot. But rarely you get rock concerts in there. But I think the fact of the matter, Chuck, these days, I saw a roster the other day, and there are acts that are big enough to play that place, which gets used, I swear, for rock concerts maybe 3 times a year. I mean, it's mainly the hockey arena, basketball, hockey arena that gets used, right? But there are bands that are big enough to play these massive venues that we barely even know the name of. So there are still huge bands out there, but it's the kids thing now. So you could be a cult act as far as what cult act used to mean to us in the 90s or 80s or whatever. You could be a cult act and fill hockey arenas all day and night all over the world, kind of thing. There are massive bands that we barely know the names of these days.
Really? Like, name some of them that are recent in the last 5 or 10 years.
Well, I know. Okay, so at the Rogers Center, I believe there was a hip hop act going in there and a country act that I barely knew the name of. So that's 2. My son's going to see Kendrick Lamar at that venue. And like I say, that venue almost never gets used. I mean, we know who Kendrick Lamar is, of course.
Yeah. But in terms of rock, there's not. I mean, yeah, there's tons of pop and rap and country. Those are all still
Sleep
big.
Token. I know those guys are really big. Who are some of the other ones? There's the odd one of those big, massive new deathcore bands, which get huge crowds, which is hard to believe because it's so extreme. I used to joke. I joke now, but I used to say it quite often that nothing could get heavier than this, right? And then I must have said that 5 times through the last 40 years, and then something sure enough comes along that is heavier, right? And so it's funny, and today's heavy music is just off the charts. I mean, with the pig grunt vocals and the moving well beyond the death vocals and the black vocals these days, and the the massive breakdowns and stuff. It's very, very progressive and complicated. The absolutely fluttery double bass drum. The drummers are insane these days. And you scroll through your TikTok, this stuff is kind of mainstream. Kids' brains are able to process this stuff, just like we were. There's a funny TikTok in fact, this just drives home the point. I was scrolling past, it might have been Facebook Shorts that they had one of these crazy Lorna Shore type, or what's the other one, Suicide something or other type, completely insane deathcore bands, the music playing over the Beatles at Ed Sullivan, right? And the headline said, "This is what your mom thought the Beatles sounded like."
Oh yeah, I saw
Right?
that video. That is funny.
So I mean that just drives home the point. It's like, extremity has changed all the way since probably fairly sped up jazz music in the 1920s, right? Through Elvis Presley and the Beatles and on and on. But yeah, you never thought things could get heavier than Metallica, and then you never thought things could get heavier than Pantera, and then you never thought things could get heavier than black metal or Slipknot. And it has. I mean, the the heavy metal of the last 5 years it's very Djent and Meshuggah influenced as well, right? But but yeah, that the heavy metal of the heavy stuff of these days, makes Death or who are some of the other heavier bands of the extreme death scene of the 80s or 90s, it makes them look like AC/DC, right? It's just that simple compared to what they're playing now.
Yeah, I thought when I was a kid, I thought Nine Inch Nails and the industrial sound, I thought that was going to be the next thing, the next future. And I think Axl kind of banked on that too. And I think that's what he was kind of trying to do with Chinese Democracy a little bit. And then I feel like for whatever reason, that industrial kind of sound, it kind of went by the wayside. They're really, I can't even think of a newer, really industrial that's, really their sound. I mean, there's pieces of that, like, what's the Ronnie Radke, Falling in Reverse? They have some of that industrial rap rock, kind of a mix, but there's not like a Nine Inch Nails type of like next level band, I don't think.
Yeah, although again, I think what tends to happen out there is once a genre is invented, it never kind of goes away. It goes underground. And then, like I say, there's so much music out there that there are little pockets of scenes for everything. I had a funny situation where I just went and saw a band I really love, Chameleons UK. And I thought they were the headliner at this thing, and I'm there watching them, and all of a sudden it's over and going, "Oh, that's interesting." But I remember looking around the crowd saying, "There's a lot of girls here. There's a lot of goth people here too, right?" I thought, "Oh, it doesn't seem like really them that kind of band." And then right after that, there's like to my surprise, there's like a 2-piece industrial act from San Diego who are obviously much bigger than the Chameleons UK are, which just kind of goes to show that there's just scenes out there, right? But to get back to Axl for a second in industrial, Axl is a true artist. He loves art, and that's why so much time is spent and so much hand wringing is done over him putting something out. I mean, with the legendary example being Chinese Democracy, but just that band in general. He loves creativity so much that he is so particular and so anal retentive about just absolutely making everything perfect before he can put it out, that it's really admirable to watch, like going through and writing those chapters in there and thinking about him doing sessions and then just shelving them, and they some of it gets used years later and whatnot, right? And then change all these members and try something with all these guys. That's the other thing. He was very good at just wanting to work with different musicians all the time. So there's a lot of really neat experimentation that goes on with that band. Whether the fans want to hear experimentation out of them is something that probably is a no, and that happens a lot with a lot of bands that you don't want them to change so much. But I think you got to let Axl be Axl. I think that guy is his head is screwed on straight when it comes to really worshiping creativity and worshiping the muse.
Is that what he was doing? Because I know there was that time from like 94, 95 when the original lineup kind of dissipated. And then I don't think he came out. I mean, 1999, Oh God, he did that single. And then I think they started doing shows later. But was that whole time, was he just working on Chinese Democracy?
Well, working on what does working on mean, right?
Was it like every day he's just writing music and tinkering and stuff? Or was there just long periods of like, what was he just depressed and laying
I think
around
it's just
doing
on and
nothing?
off, right? It's
On and
it's
off?
the business of being Axel. It's the business of doing the business. It's the business of going on tour. It's the odd song here and there. So I think just in the back of his mind, he's just always. I mean, there's writing, there's thinking, there's lyrics, there's making demos, there's making demos by yourself, there's making demos with one person, 3 people, 5 people, different people next time, different studios all over the place. So yeah, it's just and to say I'm working on Chinese democracy, it's like, okay, when does that really come up, kind of thing, that it is Chinese democracy? So, and then changes were being made right up to the last minute, kind of thing, with that whole thing, right? So that's the cool thing about that guy is and you wish we would have got more music out of him over the years, but he's just one of these guys that says when it's ready, and then I'm not going to put out anything I don't believe in.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think there's like a little mini interview in your book where you interview Tommy Stinson, who was in Guns N' Roses for a long time, and you ask him about. I'm surprised he answered. You asked him about Axl's strengths and weaknesses, and he said his strength was loyalty to people. He's going to be as loyal to you till the day, till it's over, as long as you're loyal to him. But he did say that Axl's weakness was that he cared too much about what other people thought of him, which kind of surprised me because that was something I always looked up to Guns N' Roses, and especially Axl, was like, he didn't give a fuck what anybody thought. He was going to do what he wanted no matter what. And so that was interesting to hear Tommy say that.
Yeah, that is interesting. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's funny. And maybe that's kind of like a good quality of Axl that we really don't know about because he's such a private person. But maybe he's just maybe he does want to be liked. But the public persona of him is he will do what he wants, kind of thing. He's his own boss. But maybe deep down, or more maybe in more personal relationships, he's more like, I do want to be liked.
Yeah, and then also that he mentioned that how hard it was for Axl just to walk down the street because he's such a big rock star. I mean, that part of him is so fascinating too. Just how famous he is. Like, how do you deal with that? It's got to be such a mind fuck. And maybe that's why he kind of disappeared for a while and just was a recluse, because he was like, dude, I don't want to be bothered every time I go out to eat or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I've noticed over the years, when you interview really, really big rock stars, and you kind of come away thinking, he didn't really say much that interesting or controversial, right? And then you go, I think there's a reason for that. The reason is everybody's going to listen to every exact word I say, and my words have impact, right? My words could kill jobs. It's a little bit like we got to go on tour because so many of our friends rely on a job being on tour, right? So it's almost like I think these guys over the years just realize their words have weight, and a lot of people are going to see their words, so they just get a little more careful over time. But having said that, I mean, I guess every time Axl comes out and talks, these guys aren't particularly like that. I think this particular bunch of super famous guys are pretty honest and forthcoming when they do interviews, and maybe that's a little bit of their don't give a damn sort of attitude, where they still have a little bit of that punk rock in them. But I'm sure even Slash and Duff have realized over the years, it's like, we got to watch what we say because people are going to read these interviews.
That's interesting. Yeah. Cause I don't think Axl's done a lot of interviews, and people always ask me, like, when they find out I do podcasts or whatever, like, oh, who's your like number one person that you'd love to get on the show? Like, who's your bucket list interview? And it's number one would be Axl for sure. I think it would be I could do such a good job too. I think it would be an amazing interview. I mean, it probably wouldn't be that hard because he's just so fascinating to me anyways. But I mean, well, so you think that's why he doesn't do interviews, because he thinks he might say something that could offend people or cost jobs, like you said, or cause damage?
It's interesting you say that, Chuck, because here's another thing I've noticed by doing many, many interviews over the years. There are people that don't do that many interviews because they're way too good at it. So part of it is they will probably say some really good stuff that'll be out there that probably shouldn't have got out there, and then they're going to regret it.
Hmm.
But the other thing is they just put their heart and soul into it, and it wears them out. And literally even the time, like I've interviewed a lot of people who don't do a lot of interviews where they'll just go way over time and they'll blow off, what they mixed up, and then they've made a mess of the whole schedule and all this stuff, and everybody hates them and they get mad at that. So I think a lot of people don't do a lot of interviews because they just care too much and they just do way too good a job at them, and then they get off the line after, this was supposed to be a 15-minute interview and it went an hour 15, and they're worn out. It's like, I don't do interviews because at the end of it, it's a little bit like arguing politics with a buddy, right? You get to the end of it after 2 hours of just like wearing yourself out arguing about politics, and you stand back and go, there's only 2 people that heard this damn thing. What a waste of time this was, right? This should have been on camera. That's what I tell people all the time that want to talk to me about music. It's like, no, I don't want to talk to you about music. It should be on camera. We got to get use out of this. Or don't send me this massive email. Stick it on the Facebook so we can all look at this. You're wasting your time just showing it to me, right? Because I sure as hell ain't gonna write you back something that long, right? So that's the other thing. I definitely feel like I've talked to people where it's like they don't do a lot of interviews because it just wears them the hell out, and they do end up saying things they shouldn't have said.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I always feel when I come away with a longer interview, like I just had Tracy Guns on, like I said, and it was close. I think it was like a 3-hour interview, and I got off of that interview and I just felt so energized. And I felt like we just had this great conversation, and he revealed so much stuff, and he really opened up about Guns N' Roses stuff and LA Guns and what he thinks about this. And there was a little bit of politics, and it was just everything. And I just feel like he really opened up, and I just felt so energized. So it's interesting that you say that.
But you say it went how long? How long did it go?
It went about 3 hours.
Yeah. So think about him getting off that line, right? He gets off the line and goes, I just shot my whole day doing this, right? And it's like,
he seemed to have a good time though. I mean,
well, I know, but he's worn out. His voice is shot, right? He can't talk for the rest of the day. He's probably blown off 2 or 3 things he was supposed to do that day, right? So my point is, he might have enjoyed your company, but in the back of his mind, for the rest of his life, he's going to think, man, I can't do these. People have asked me to do interviews, and in the back of his mind, he's thinking an interview is 3 hours long when really the publicist is saying, no, I want you to do like 4 20-minute interviews.
Yeah.
It's
I
like,
think that is what the publicist wanted, but I said, I go, hey, do you need to go? And he goes, no, we keep going. I was like, well, then I'm just going to keep asking questions.
Yeah. That's funny.
So yeah, I mean, Axl Rose, like, I feel like if I did it, I would want it to be a 3-hour interview, because I want to there's so much to cover. There's so many things from the beginning of the early days to the Use Your Illusions to the Chinese Democracy to now, and just all this stuff that's so fat. Like,
but the thing is, Chuck, the reason I went on that big rant is because in the back of my mind, I can remember seeing some older Axl interviews, and they are great. He is that.
Oh
guy
yeah, he's a genius
who will just give himself to the interview.
Right.
So he is that guy. Where part of the reason he probably doesn't do a lot of interviews is he's probably gotten into a lot of trouble by doing the few that he has done.
Well, Tracy Gunn said, I can't remember if he said it in my interview or another one I listened to, but he was saying part of the reason that he left Guns N' Roses at the time is because Axl would get up there and he wouldn't even sing. Tracy's like, I just want to play music. And Axl would get up there and do these rants for like an hour. He would just rant about different things but people loved it. It was really fascinating because he's a fascinating guy.
Yeah. And Chuck, the other thing I noticed by seeing Prince on Oprah, I think it was. Did Prince do an interview on Oprah? I think Prince went on Oprah.
I don't know. I'm sure if it might be on YouTube if it happened.
Anyway, I realized that Prince doesn't do a lot of interviews because he's stupid. He
Really?
had nothing to say. He's a terrible interview. So he probably realized that early on and said, and he's a genius too. He's a musical genius.
Yeah.
But I think he realized early on, it's like, I have nothing to say about any of this stuff. So it's like probably even his management, everybody said, Prince, don't do talking because you don't do it very well.
That would be interesting to interview. Another one that would have like almost be up there as high as Axl would be Izzy. And I don't know if he would be a good interview or not, because I think he's a brilliant songwriter, but can can he verbalize that in an interview? Could he explain how he wrote these songs, or would it be like a Prince thing?
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, there's a few like that Prince one where you go, yeah, I can see why you don't do a lot of interviews.
Who's the best person that you've personally interviewed?
Oh God. I always liked talking to Bill Ward. I always liked talking to Zach Wilde, especially when he was drinking and we were on the bus. That was always hilarious because he could do Bill Ward and well, he could definitely do Ozzy impressions. That was always good. Oddly enough, Ted Nugent is an amazing interview.
I've had him on twice. That guy he's so easy. You just sit back and let him go.
Yeah. After a while, though, you get his greatest hits, and you gotta like steer him away from the greatest hits kind of thing, right? There's a lot of good.
You ever interviewed Dee Snider? He's another one who's
he's great. Bruce Dickinson is great. I just had a big fat new Iron Maiden book just come out on my birthday, actually 2 weeks ago. 666 pages, hallowed by their name. The unofficial Iron Maiden Bible, and I have fond memories of interviewing Bruce. He's always very intelligent, has good stuff to say. Big musicologist. He can talk about the influences on everything and all that, and put things in context. So yeah, there's I mean, most of the time they're pretty good. Yeah, but you do get some inarticulate ones that you think haven't really told you much.
And so you're not much of a hair metal fan then?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a fan of all that stuff. People sometimes think that because there's also a hot debate, like people don't like calling it hair metal, right? I have no problem with that term. But yeah, no, I from the very moment it came out in 1983 with Rat and Great White and Motley Crue's second album and whatever you want to call it, Dokken at the beginning, Quiet Ride at the beginning, Twisted Sister, right all the way through. I had most of those albums, and I liked most of those albums, like anybody else. The poppier it was, or the more repetitive or redundant to things that came before. Sure, I was just like the critics, not a big fan of. For some reason, I always hated every single thing Bon Jovi ever did. That's one band I just never could get into for a moment. And then oddly enough, Poison, I became a massive Poison fan starting kind of in the 90s when I started interviewing them and liking them and understanding what they were doing and their newer music and stuff. So I was never a big Poison fan of their actual big albums. It's just kind of later on. But I loved I loved Skid Row and Extreme, and like I say, Love Hate. I loved Slaughter. I loved Kip Tracy. That whole screechy Dana Strum sound, I loved that as well. Loved Guns N' Roses, of course. Great White went downhill for me a little bit. I mean, I loved the EP in the first album, and then it kind of went downhill a little bit because it got a little too smooth sounding and not very heavy. But I was a fan of that all through that thing. Plus, all traditional heavy metal through the 80s. Thrash through the 80s. When grunge picked up, I loved grunge. I loved alternative hard stuff all through the 80s.
Did you ever get to interview any of those grunge bands like Alice in Chains or Nirvana?
Yep. Yeah. Let's see. Dave Grohl, Lane Staley. Not Lane Staley. Jerry Cantrell, Sean Kinney, Mark Arm, Stone Gossard. Who else from that scene? Buzz
from the Melvins.
The Melvins. I guess not really too many of them. If I thought about there'd be a few more, and then repeat it. Jerry Cantrell 2 or 3 times, and Sean a couple times.
What about Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue? That's another one on the bucket list for me.
Yeah, I interviewed him a bunch of times as well, on the phone, in person. Met those guys. Been backstage with Vince, on the bus with them. Oh, hang on. No, I didn't get on the bus with them. I was backstage with them, also at the record company with them. Yeah, they're all good interviews. Nicky knows his music really well. He's a very personable guy. I think out of those 4 guys, my favorite interviews would be Nicky and Tommy. Tommy's also Tommy's a smart guy. He's a good dude. Vince doesn't have particularly much to say. Mick's pretty good too. Vince, I suppose, is not that, insightful on, I don't know. I sometimes it just feels like maybe he doesn't want to be there. It felt like that at times, but
When were you backstage? Like back in the heyday when it was crazy, or more like when recently?
No, with Motley, I remember one place being our big shed in Toronto, Molson Amphitheater. So that would have been what year is it now? 2025. That would have been maybe 2000, 2005, something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they kind of cleaned up a little bit by then.
Yeah.
Nikki at least, and not so much Vince and Tommy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's another thing I find interesting, that doing a lot of these interviews, like it's a lot of the same story. Like the band works really hard, they get big, and then there's a drug problem, the band breaks up, then they get sober, and then the band gets back together. I feel like that's like a lot of the band stories, it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I say, that Go to Vancouver and Try Harder, which you reminded me of that, because a lot of that has we got sober and made this really good quality album, right? So yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think it'd be really cool to just do a hair metal book that just looks at the years after Nirvana. That would be kind of pretty interesting, because I agree with you. I think all the albums got better in 92, 93.
Yeah, a lot of them have kind of a cult following. Like I thought, because I grew up in Seattle in the 90s, and I was into grunge, but I was really into hair metal and Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue and Warrant. And I thought like Dog Eat Dog and Poison's Native Tongue, I thought those albums were so great. And I was like, I feel so like alone, because all my friends are listening to Alice in Chains' Dirt and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I like that stuff too. But like, what about this album? Like, it's like it was like embarrassing to tell people you liked it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I was living in Vancouver in 88, 89, and getting all that grunge stuff, all the original EPs and everything at Zulu Records there. And I was just blown away by all that music. It just did everything for me that I never really thought I didn't really recognize was lacking in the hair metal stuff that I liked, but it just checked off a whole bunch of other boxes. It just felt way more dangerous, like you just didn't know what was going to happen next. Like Soundgarden, it'll be a proggy song, a doomy song, a bluesy song, a short song, a long song. Anything could happen with that music, and that's what I loved about it. And it felt heavier. It felt heavier than all the hair metal stuff. It just something about injecting that Sabbathy vibe or just the murkiness of it meant that, by certain definitions, it was heavier than hair metal.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I love it all. Well, the Guns N' Roses book, do we have a date as to when that is? That out? It's not out yet, right? When does it come out?
I think it's it's kind of out right now as we're speaking. It's what is it, May 13th? It's kind of out by the end of this month, middle of June kind of thing. I know physical copies exist, they're in the warehouse, all that sort of stuff. So just like an album, well, no, albums have a clear release date. I suppose books do too. I think late June is when it actually says. I think it says.
And can people pre-order it now?
You can get it on Amazon and my site. I've got all my description of it and PayPal buttons. And anytime anybody gets them from me, I sign them and send them out. So yeah, mail order is a big part of my business. So yeah, you can order it now. As soon as it comes in, it'll head out the door.
And then your podcast is on YouTube, and people can follow you. I think you're on Instagram, right?
No, I'm not on Instagram, but we do have a very prolific YouTube channel called The Contrarians, but my podcast is an audio-only podcast, and it's called History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. I've done like 308 episodes of that. The website is martinpopoff.com, like all the books in print, full descriptions, PayPal buttons there for US, international, Canada. Out of the 130 books, there's probably 100 that are in print, so they're all available. That's about it. I do an AC/DC podcast with John Gaffney called Kicked in the Teeth, an AC/DC podcast. Nice. I'm on Brian Slagle's podcast as well, every time, with a little clip in there about these songs he does, 100 most important songs in heavy metal. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. Great conversation, and I'll get this episode out soon.
All right, Chuck. Very cool. Nice chatting with you.
Nice chatting with you. Bye-bye.
Every topic, one of a kind. From the rockers to the wise men.